whenever I look at these past pictures, I always realize my hair grows way too fast to get a haircut, and then it gets out of control. It just hits a point where it gets out of control, and I have to fix it. And then I'm like, all right, it's good. It's good for a while. And then it's just, 3 weeks later, whoops, never mind. And it appears we're live. Hey, everyone, is going to have a good show today. Don't worry about it. Let me just hit the intro, and we'll get right into it. So, hey everyone, I have the wonderful pleasure today of doing the 6th installment of the Digital Cash Rundown with Eléonore Blanc. How's it going?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me here, Joel. It's such an honor to be on your show. Thank you.
Yeah, so before we go into chatting about all the cool and random things that have been going on lately in the cryptoverse, do you mind telling people just what's your claim to fame? What are you doing here? How did you get this invite, etc.?
I have no idea. Super weird. I don't know what I'm doing here. There's no claim to fame. I'm not anything special. I'm just one of those people out there that likes cryptocurrencies, that likes to talk about cryptocurrencies, that's involved in spreading adoption of cryptocurrencies across the world. So no claim to fame, just someone who's very enthusiastic about, I guess, internet magic money. And it's been a blast these couple of years doing that, and working right now with Satoshi's Angels on that mission, basically.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here.
Well, fantastic. And I'd like to remind everyone that there is a live crypto super chat where you can go to cointr.ee/thedesertlinks, and then you can just go leave a donation with a message, and it pops up, and it'll pop up right up on the screen. I can pop it in and out, although I do screen it, so if you say something vulgar, I will not let that go through. Don't worry. That's
what? Censorship.
Yes.
Censorship.
Well, censorship is the way.
You don't read every message.
Yes, it's the way the crypto is going these days, in a pro-censorship, anti-custody kind of a self-custody kind of a way. So that's a unfortunate, sad little segue.
Yeah, that's terrible. But then you shouldn't block people. Even if people are gonna write ridiculous thing. I don't know. Don't you what was the worst thing that anybody wrote in one of these super chats? Kind of.
What made me decide to do a 2FA on the super chat, have to screen it, was a lot of the N-word, if you know what I mean. Just the first one, just 5 million in a row, and it was all right. And they only paid 1 cent to say that. Those stingy bastards.
Well, isn't that beautiful? How cheap transactions can be over the internet, and you can do whatever you want,
including drop a bunch of N-bombs, which it's not something that I created this show to try to do, but so
fair enough.
Recently, now, this is of course a little bit of hearsay, but because it's coming from a respected or a prominent, depending on what you think of him, figure in the crypto world, Brian Armstrong, Coinbase's CEO, did say that last week he heard rumors that the U.S. Treasury and Treasury Secretary Mnuchin was planning to rush out some last-minute kind of regulations and changes that, long story short, would make it illegal to self-host a crypto wallet, which self-host basically means you run it yourself, you hold your own keys, you do all that kind of stuff. And which sounds like it's a strange thing. It'd be like you can't self-custody gold anymore, or paper money, or whatever. It's you have to do it through a registered blah blah blah, and that's it's a very strange and unprecedented step. First, what was your initial reaction when you saw that?
Shock. Shock, because I think for anybody who's been in crypto for just even a little bit of time, you must have come across the, not your keys, not your crypto mantra that this whole ecosystem repeats over and over. And I think self-custody is actually really, really important. It's actually something I fight for, something I stand for, and this week I was just hosting a cryptocurrency 101 class, and I repeat it endlessly: not your keys, not your crypto. Make sure to back up your private keys, and I make sure to promote non-custodian wallets every time. So no, this is really scary. But at the same time, I think it's interesting that they finally understand where regulations could really hinder the space. Because for a long time, I just saw all these regulations flying around and I thought, still not, I still feel like they haven't really gotten to being able to block people.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that this is not the first step towards basically more powerful regulations on this space. And I really hope that we're able to keep privacy and financial freedom as a flagship concept for all of us.
Yeah, exactly. And for people who don't, I mean, this is the entire reason we have crypto to begin with. The technology is cool, all that stuff, but the thing is peer-to-peer electronic cash. And the two things, the electronic is the least interesting part of that whole phrase. Peer-to-peer is the biggest one, which is person to person. You can just use it person to person with no middleman, no, middle institution. Yeah. And cash, of course, is a way of saying it's just a medium of exchange that's kind of like free. It's, it's denominated. You can just trade it and that's it. It's just no restriction. It's not like, well, this payment's associated with this here invoice there. And it's just like, no, just giving people stuff, just transferring value. Free, open transfer of value. And this, of course, if this is true, would definitely make that not a thing in the US anymore. Now, this is where I put on my little skeptic hat. So first off, the amount of bad things that the government in the entire world is trying to do at any moment's notice is, pretty horrific. And the amount of things that actually get done are probably 10% of that. And that's not a very that's a terrible way of seeing it. You're like saying like, okay, if they're so bad at it and maybe it gets lost in like the task, the to-do list of the government or something. It's like, no, I feel like we have to be super loud about it and say like, no, we don't want this. And like, who is advising those people and telling them those things to do? Yeah.
And it makes me just wonder how are non-custodial wallets going to react? Like, should they start lobbying? Should they start like getting together and saying, we bring value to this economy? I don't know. I'm thinking about, well, obviously Coinbase is now speaking up. I'm expecting Edge or, other non-custodian wallets out there to start saying, hey, no, we have a user base. We bring value. Don't hinder this space. And also, how could they enforce it basically? Like through the
most difficult part.
Google Store and iOS, and then call them out and say, yeah, all these non-custodian wallets, mobile non-custodian wallets, like you delist them? I don't know.
Yeah, you'd have to do something like that. But the big thing is, so their definition of self-hosted might be a little bit different. Like they might just let anyone use, say, Edge, but they might make Edge do KYC or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's not okay. The one reason I'm using Edge is because there's no KYC.
Yes, which shout out to Paul, friend of the podcast. I love
Yay!
the guy. But that's the thing is anyone can download, like, compile the source code of like a wallet and run your full node.
Sure.
And like, how do you?
I'm not a fan of that.
But that's what I mean, I understand that as well. But just the fact that it's just like a program, it's not even like app and app store is already hard to shut down.
I know.
But when you talk about, it's just literally someone made a little code thingy that interacts with the blockchain, and then how are you going to get into everyone's computer, especially those of us who use Linux and stuff? How are you going to get in there and just be like, that's not right? And basically, it reminds me of the file sharing days, where back in the day, a lot of licensing companies for electronic media and stuff got away with murder, basically charging so much money for this, extorting royalties, all this kind of stuff. And then someone realized, hey, we can just download these files and we can just share them with each other on these sites.
No, but yeah, okay. I feel like, okay, very interesting. I know you're like, for me, you're like the super user, right? You're like already like a techie. You like, running my own node. Yeah, duh. Like that's not the majority of people. And I feel like privacy and, self custody or however they're calling it, wallets available on normal, places like the iOS, like the Google iOS store or whatever, are super important for mass adoption. The cryptocurrency is not going to come through Linux. I mean, Linux users, I'm guessing, are already into crypto. The
If
most
they're
important
not,
is
they're
like,
kind of dumb. Sorry if I offended someone here, but whatever.
I don't, it's like, I don't want to, but I just feel like in terms of audiences, like Linux people are already extremely tech savvy. They can do a lot already on their own. They're used to using alternative software. They're used to, cracking stuff, and they're like, nothing's going to stop me. And they already have that mentality and probably the resources and the knowledge. I'm thinking of everybody else on this planet who's not running their own nodes or not on Linux.
Yeah. It's so, I think one thing that Brian Armstrong pointed out is a very good point, which is not, oh, this is terrible, everyone has a right to blah, blah, blah. He didn't say about that. He's basically said, look, the developing world, everyone else in the world is already using this. All you do is cut off Americans from, or make them scared to, let's be honest, not actually cut them off, but make them scared to interact with this whole other sector out there. And it would just cause a lot of innovation things to be lost. I like the DeFi angle as well. The DeFi wallets are self-hosted by definition, which, and I'm a little bit of a DeFi skeptic, but not conceptual, but in terms of like, whatever. But just the fact that there's things that people will want to participate in that you can't, it's like there's no one holds the money kind of thing. It's just like a smart contract. Just that is like that's enough of a thing to hopefully cause regulators to be like, what is this? I don't understand this. What do I even do? Okay. And just like back off for the moment.
Well, maybe we can go back to your first assumption that all of that this whatever idea that came out of whatever meeting gets scrapped, or it's like, oh yeah, we'll take care of this in like 2 years or whatever. I'm just going through Brian's. So first of all, Brian is like he's such a good CEO, but he's also like extremely PC. Like I think he's like, he speaks well, he presents well. Like it's I think and it's really interesting how Coinbase has presented themselves, and I think the culture of Coinbase, how they've all of that, and it's wonderful as well. All the work they've been doing since how long have they existed? Like Coinbase is like since 20. I want to say 14, 13, like
it's got
way back,
because
even earlier.
It existed. Like I got into crypto in 2013, and I remember not long after hearing stuff about Coinbase. So it's got to be around that time. Of course, people smarter than me or more Google enabled than me will be able to quickly search that. But
I love that one of the examples I'm just going to pick out in his Twitter thread. There's many things, as you said, the DeFi aspect, privacy aspect, but he gave a shout out to Eat BCH. Like that's so nice. I know, and that's exactly the type of platform which is inspiring, where they're actually helping people in Venezuela and also in South Sudan, and they take BCH donations basically to be able to buy food, and there's obviously no KYC ML in the process, and that's exactly the beauty of cryptocurrencies with people like that on the ground. Go Brian Armstrong for giving a shout out for Eat BCH.
Yes,
that's
it's also cool. Worth pointing out the whole black market thing, which is people do what they will do, and regulations don't stop activity. They just put barriers in certain places, which cause things to flow elsewhere. And so one thing I have noticed is on local Bitcoins type services, there's always a premium for privately bought things. Crypto ATMs that just, some of them do KYC, but some of them just do none for small amounts, or they just have a phone number or something. The prices are always higher. Like everything is priced in a free market, including freedom. Freedom has a price in a free market, which is kind of strange and possibly sad to think about. But all this means is if I decide to go buy or sell crypto from just some person on the street, or some friend or something, and just self-custody wallet to self-custody wallet, that just means that will put a premium on that transaction. That's all it will really mean in the end of the day.
I know, but you know how I like low fees. I like cheap transactions. I want that immediate peer-to-peer transaction to go through seamlessly, cheap, and I don't want people to start thinking, oh my God, this is illegal. You know, it's already like we've already had to come over the whole hurdle of like cryptocurrency is for like crazy people and, you know, for bad things, and it's only for criminals. I feel like we're past that. And this is just like kind of a little annoying regulation, you know, looming in. And I've seen it also like here in the Netherlands, because we went through this whole new European directive for service providers that were in the Netherlands, in Europe. And then there was a European directive that was implemented at different state level. And some businesses had to leave. So exchanges that had not been doing extensive KYC ML, or exchanges that were basically that had a strong user base already since 2013, 2014, we're like, no, we're not changing our business model. We have a strong, loyal base of customers or our clients, and they, you know, we're not going to, comply to all of this. And it requires a huge budget. Like that's something no one really talks about, but to become like compliant, like, you know, whatever, with the authorities, it costs a lot of money. And maybe some people are like, no, we're not growing our compliance department. This is not part of our services. So we just have to like go somewhere else. So
yeah, it definitely will hopefully push stuff out of the, out of the whole US centric world anyway, because that's the thing is like also as citizens of the internet, which, we're moving to a world that's much more remote anyway, and physical location, physical jurisdictions are just much less applicable in general. And so I think just it'll be sort of like how everyone VPN'd Binance so they could use Binance from places or whatever. I think it's just going to start to be, the definitions are kind of moving away from that. But maybe I'm just, a hopeful, happy person who's been using crypto, no KYC, unbanked for the last 5 years. So maybe it's just like my own little vision of like around here, the way things have always been, but it could be. Now, on that same note of government and regulation, all the good things that we just love in the world, there's a report that the Libra, or the Facebook currency or whatever, is finally going to come out in January of next year, also known as, you sneeze and whoop, it's January. So first, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm surprised you wanted to talk about it, because I was like, well, Libra, yeah, whatever. I mean, it's a little bit interesting. I thought it was interesting in the beginning when it came out, because they said that it would create like 300 new jobs in Geneva, which is my hometown in Switzerland. And I was like, whoa, that's where Facebook is doing their thing. But then it sort of didn't really fly. And then they had all these, people dropping out of the project. So yeah, I mean, if there's probably a use case, yay for the masses, yay Facebook for trying to launch their own coin. As usual, like I think it's always interesting when the private sector gets into minting their own currency, even if it's a centralized one, even if it's not using all the beauty of blockchain, right? Why not? It's still, I think that angle still holds, like the sort of, wow, the private sector realizes that they can have their own monetary policies.
Yeah, which honestly is probably the hugest thing. Right here, the only part of this whole article, I was just looking at some Cointelegraph article, but the only part that really stands out that anyone needs to pay attention to, honestly, is Libra will launch in the form of a US dollar-backed digital currency, i.e., in case we didn't have enough stable coins, now we got another one.
And also anything linked to the dollar, are you kidding me? Like, how can you still, like, link it? Sorry, but I'm going to shill, like, the Swiss franc, but peg it to, like, a good currency out there. Sorry, that's just my Swissness sometimes coming out, but that's an actual good reserve money for all of you guys.
Use the more polished turd, not just the regular old turd. It's like, we're not competing amongst like the best things, and that's been one of my things about like stablecoin hype is I understand. So a lot of people need to like remember the history, like the reason why stablecoins even exist. They basically exist so people get to go get around regulations, because people wanted to trade in and out of cryptocurrencies and dollars. And so then, you got Tether, because you don't have to do KYC and stuff. It's like you kind of, it's kind of dollars, but not really, because some digital loophole thing. And now everyone's like talking about, stablecoin is such a, okay, you know what? The dollar is already the stablecoin. You can already transfer digitally through banks and payment apps and things like that. And the entire point that people love cryptos for is that they go up in value. Why do they go up in value? Because they're not being inflated to crap all the time. So why do you want to peg your, like, long term? I understand short term use cases. I'm going to move it into stablecoin and then dump it in here, whatever. I understand that stuff. But as far as like, I'm going to hold most of my stuff in stablecoins. Like, why do you want a cryptocurrency that's pegged to a hyperinflationary asset that's the entire reason for cryptos to get out of this stuff? So, yay, Libra is going to be like digibucks, sort of like, it's just the dollar. You still need probably KYC to use it. You still like lose value year after year through inflation. Like, what's the point? The point is to get around the payment processors, the banks as the payment processors, and to have Facebook and tech companies take over payment processing. That's the real point. But for the end consumer, who cares?
Yeah, no, I agree. But there's a good point here in the chat on YouTube, and someone says, I think Libra can still serve as an important on-ramp to cryptocurrencies to increase adoption awareness. It's true that, I mean, how many billion users does Facebook have?
Yeah.
Like, they could, I mean, and, you know, with the news like PayPal this week and stuff like that, I mean, sure, the more the merrier. And then we can maybe, you know, tug people towards the good direction at some point, hopefully.
Yeah. Now it just the PayPal what would we call it? The example is very appropriate because also PayPal is one of those things that when you think about it is going to be really good for cryptocurrencies because basically PayPal is going to bring a whole lot of people who are able to buy and sell and interact and stuff, even though it's not really crypto, even though it's, you know, whatever. However, so that's good for crypto. However, on its own, it's kind of useless. Like, you don't need PayPal at all. It's not going to bring anything new and better to the crypto ecosystem. It's just going to create a crappier version of like the crypto experience, but that will somehow bring a lot of people. So it's the same thing with Libra. I do think it'll be great for opening the doors for a lot of people to start issuing their own coins and using their own payment processing and stuff as companies, and will get consumers very interested in using cryptocurrencies. But the actual Libra itself is kind of like meh, like, you know, not really a big deal.
We're maybe just crypto snobs, you know, at this point. We're like, oh, not that way. I'm not touching that. But sure, you can come and play with us. But, you know, thanks PayPal. But, you know, we're not using that. Good that you're just shilling it to people that are outside of our
just how I feel
community
with any custodial service at all comes out. So great for people who aren't me. But we just got a donation from Lugax Care, or however you say that name. I'm sorry. I'll learn it one of these days. He follows me on memo.cash.
Lugax Care.
So thanks very much for the Bitcoin Cash. You wanted to say, so thanks for that question, I guess. It was just a nice donation. Sure. But he can add
Did you censor his?
No.
Did you censor his message?
No,
okay.
That's how it shows up. Man, all these hostile questions today. What's with the attitude? Anyway, so of course, next up we got ETH 2.0. Now, have you followed ETH 2.0 very much?
I have, well, ish, but yes, I have kinda, and I'm really in awe of their community, and I'm so happy for them. Like, I'm so happy that they reached, you know, everything that they wanted to do right now. I can't believe that's actually happening. I feel like a lot of people for a long time were like, oh, well, whatever, Ethereum is such a scam, blah. And like, no, go Ethereum. Like, go you guys, and go scale. Show us how you're going to scale. Like, I want to see it.
Yeah, so that's the thing is it's supposedly going to launch very soon. Was it beginning of December, I guess, is like now officially, finally. Now, I have to, you know, be careful of what I say here because I'm a big fan of Ethereum existing. I use a bunch of Ethereum-based tokens, or, you know, I gather them and do stuff. And I want for the best for them, and I really hope that this next milestone will actually help them scale. I am, however, a little bit of an Ethereum scaling skeptic long term, which it doesn't come from like a point of, it's just seeing how far, like, it's been trying to happen for 3 years now, right? And of course I understand that, and it's just, that means that the experience has been kind of garbage for 3 years. Hopefully it'll get fixed. We'll see. But the thing is, Ethereum does a whole lot of things on chain, and a lot of, complicated things, a lot of transactions, a lot of, data in each of those transactions. And ultimately, especially when people aren't even running anything serious on it yet, as far as I know. As long as people are still in the CryptoKitties phase of things, and it's already clogged up to where they have to majorly overhaul the network to get the hobbyist stuff passed, I don't know. Like, is this going to be the world's running on this and it's going to be cheap? I have a feeling that Ethereum is going to perpetually be in Bitcoin land of kind of slow and expensive, but everyone sort of uses it or tries to. Maybe that's just my feeling and / prediction, which I'd love to be wrong because that would mean something awesome happened. But that's just my skeptical feeling on that. What do you think?
Interesting. I think I share part of your skepticism, obviously. I do want the unicorns and the rainbows to succeed. That's my bias. But I think what's the big difference between BTC and Ethereum is that, okay, BTC sort of dropped the ball on scaling, and we're like, we're not doing that. And it's just like, we are totally okay with people paying high fees forever. And we're not going to try solving that anytime soon. And, anyways, don't use it, don't spend it. Forget that narrative. We've never been about coffee for crypto. It's always been about just a massive, store of whatever, even store value narrative I don't like. So that's Bitcoin. But I think Ethereum scaling is actually on its roadmap. They've actually this is something that they care about. Like, one team is like, no, we don't care anymore. And the other one's like, okay, we realize it's a problem and it's part of our roadmap and we're working on it. So I want to root for the team that's at least trying. That's my take.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's the great wild west of just, everything. And Bitcoin did what it could and then stopped trying at 1 megabyte. Other Bitcoin-based projects have done the same thing with, much higher megabytes, which a much bigger block size, which presents its own challenges, but those could be, surmounted as it goes along. But that's doing well. And then every time, the thing is, this is like a tech hype space, where everyone's like, oh, this is going to do everything. And then eventually you kind of hit some realism, and then we see where it goes. Like, do you remember IOTA back in the day? Oh, it scales.
You mean Idiota?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a nice purse that I almost bought.
Yeah. It scales infinitely, whatever. It just, everything works. And then it kind of ran into a lot of technical hurdles and sort of petered out. And then I haven't checked out recently because I heard like the co-founders were trying to sue each other and all this kind of bad stuff.
No.
Or they were fighting with each other. But I remember one
I'm
of
sorry
them,
to hear.
and there was like allegations.
It's maybe they got lost in their tangle. Like, you remember, like,
yes.
I'm being nasty.
Yes.
No, but I remember when I was at like a blockchain conference or something, and what's the big car manufacturer? Like, I want to say Mercedes or someone was working with IOTA. And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to have the story where, a car gets hacked because the tangle, whatever, split. And then, I don't know. So yeah, IOTA is like, one of those, it's not a good blockchain design at all.
It's one of those, like, also like promises of infinite scaling. And then a couple of the things that I saw, and this is not shit on IOTA hour, by the way. It's an interesting example because one of the things is like free transactions. And I'm like, I'm smart enough to know free doesn't exist in the world. That means someone else is paying. And who is paying? Well, it's like if everyone has to, go and like, it's like you go to the coffee shop, but you got to bring your own beans and you got to like make your own coffee and then you leave. So it's free coffee, but you got to like do it all yourself. So that's the reason you pay someone, is so you don't have to. It's a division of labor, right? Some people are specialized in creating coffee. You're specialized in other things. You exchange it. There you go. And so the whole thing about you can only confirm your transaction if you confirm to others of other people. And you have to like do some proof of work yourself in order to send your own transactions. And then I saw people were already starting to like do like IOTA mining services where like you could pay them a fee and they'd process your transaction for you and stuff. And I'm just like, oh, it's back to regular old proof of work, like the full circle. And so,
Wow, interesting. I didn't go that deep. I didn't realize that IOTA was such a DIY, type
yeah.
of blockchain. I forgot that angle actually in the design.
Yeah, it's so
Interesting.
when you promise infinite or free, those things, neither of those things exist. And that's one thing when like you talk about infinite on-chain scaling, well, maybe not infinite, but like as much as people need. And then cheap transactions. Okay, yes, cheap. Maybe a cent or two. But like when people start like then get into the BSV angle where people are talking about, Terra blocks all over the place and, small infinitely small like microtransaction fees and stuff, and just you can put everything on the blockchain, everything's going to be there, and it doesn't matter how big. It's like, well, this is a finite world. Maybe rhetorically you can build big, huge, unlimited seeming things, but at some point there's limitations and there's trade-offs. You have to balance for those, and a lot of technology is making things more efficient so that you actually get more out of it, but there are still some limitations. And of course, that reminds me of another project that I unfortunately haven't followed too closely in the very recent months, but Avalanche. My friend Emin Gunsier, the esteemed professor, has been talking to me about, and there's a few good interviews on my channel with him. And he basically
Isn't Avalanche also a Tangle, by the way? I was like reading about it. It's also they're using the same thing as IOTA.
yeah, not from my understanding, but then again, I don't understand Tangle very much. I kind of get, the way that they use come to consensus and stuff. And it seems interesting, and he just, oh, it's so fast, it just works so fast, it's even more secure, it's this and that. And look, so I am cautiously optimistic about that, but still cautious because it's like, okay, you might have found out a revolutionary new way that everything just works out, where everyone can participate and stuff. But at the same time, there might be ways of yet unforeseen ways of hacking the whole thing that makes it absolutely catastrophic. And it's just like so for example, that reminds me also of delegated proof of stake, where people say, oh, proof of stake is great, but you can't have everyone participate because that's just too many nodes on the network, too many different individual actors. It just is not going to work. So it's like, well, what if we only have 21, but we let everyone participate anyway and just high delegate, and then the 21 it like moves super fast, but everyone participates, and then it's just like, oh, well, all these delegates get like bought by Justin Sun, and there you go, boom. Like, of course, not that simple, but then you start to see like, okay, now we have some issues with the delegation part of the proof of stake part. So nothing's as simple as it seems.
No, and the delegated proof of stake, I understand that coming from a direct democracy where delegating part of my my voting rights or that I delegated to someone who's going to represent me. I'm not completely against the model. The problem is when you can buy out that representative that I've elected. It's like, what? No, that's where I put the line. So, and I had a conversation a while back, when we used to have in-person meetups a year ago.
I still did last Saturday, but I'm sorry for,
Yeah, well, okay. You live in a very free society. I know, Joel. You're very lucky. You're very, very lucky, and you should. And I know you. I'm happy you enjoy it every day.
Yes.
But basically, here, I was talking to an EOS block producer, and it was heartbreaking. Like, really, like they tried and everything, and they had a lot of support. They're actually a Dutch-based EOS block producer and everything, but they couldn't compete with exchanges being block producers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what happened when, I don't know, whatever exchange is a top EOS or whatever delegated proof of stake blockchain validator, imagine if it gets hacked, and then the exchange that is like a delegated proof of stake, a validator could reverse the chain and only like reimburse like their clients. I was thinking like they could like game it and be like, yeah, well, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
But
or it's just like kind of like mining empty blocks and stuff too. There's always some stuff, which there's something to get to. And that before that, the last article thing here was on Ethereum Classic plans a Thanos hard fork to restore mining with older GPUs. And so first off, I apologize for bringing up Ethereum Classic, like it still matters. So sorry for the burn there, but
It's no, it's cute. Actually, I always thought that Ethereum Classic was interesting, like
yeah, I did
as a
too.
thought experiment, and as forks go, I think it's good to let other people do their thing. Like, I don't know if that's a good segue, but it's like it's
Yeah,
important that other chains are allowed to exist, even if they have a different value proposition.
yeah. And so the thing about Ethereum Classic seems, from my memory, it seems to be born out of disagreement, right? With a disagreement with the DAO hack refund, and then that's kind of like where it ended up. Whereas Ethereum, while doing most of the same things, only without that, uh, had all the mind share of the community. Everyone was still there. Everyone was building things. Everyone had roadmaps and visions and stuff. And Ethereum Classic was just kind of like, well, we said no. And so it's kind of like, that's kind of what it was. But to, again, not trying to dump on it too hard, but talking about the ASIC resistance thing. So first off, what do you think of the concept
Yeah.
of ASIC resistance?
That's just, I'm sorry. This is where Ethereum Classic lost me because it's reminding me of like Monero days as well when they were like, oh yeah, don't mine us. I'm like, oh gosh, like just let it be. Just like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But it's just like, no, you're not, why are you making it difficult for people that are actually like mining your chain? You should be like thankful that someone is actually like keeping up the security and mining and ASIC. But maybe that's just my Bitmain alumni feeling, and then I'm like pro ASIC miners and stuff. So
Bitmain Illuminati feeling, you know.
and not Illuminati alumni.
Yes, I know. You know, Illuminati confirmed. We're right there with Beyonce and the Illuminati. But oh, yeah. So that's one of those things. It's very I it's something that a lot of people in crypto have just like taken as a given. This is a good thing. The ASIC resistance is a good thing. Oh, everyone should mine. You shouldn't have a, it's ASIC resistance is a thing you put like on a infographic of like good things about your coin and stuff. And I'm not sold on that concept at all. I think that people just like the idea that on this little laptop over here, I'm just running a thing and I'm mining. They don't think beyond that about how things should kind of work out.
It's actually quite BTC mentality of them to be like that. That kind of a small blocker. Everybody's like, mining on that. Everybody is running their own node, and everybody's like, don't trust, verify yourself, verify everything yourself. I'm like, well, no.
Yeah.
Let others mine.
Well, the thing about
with ASICs.
the idea behind ASIC resistance and the moral feeling behind ASIC resistance is not something I necessarily disagree with. The problem is the reality of it. If you have there's ASIC resistant ASICs. There's no such thing as ASIC resistance, period, because over time people just build technology that is more specifically calibrated to mine that kind of algorithm, whatever algorithm you have. And so over time it's eventuality. What you do the only thing you can really do is just change the algorithm every once in a while, so it just makes everyone's hardware obsolete. And basically, if you make something like super ASIC resistance, basically it makes it easier. You can still have like a data center or something that just can mine off of that much better in your little computers or whatever. It doesn't take big players out. What it does is it takes specialized big players out. So now you just have any old person with a giant farm that just can attack any and all of the ASIC resistant coins at any one point, and just there you go. What having ASICs means is there's people who are invested in the infrastructure of your specific project. Now, of course, when you go to like the many Bitcoin forks, could be any of those projects. But let's just say you're at the top of your own you're the dominant coin on your chain. Then if people like screw with the chain too much, then their whole investment is worthless. So basically ASICs kind of add a level of security to the coin that isn't just, don't get attacked. It's just that perpetual motion of actual investment in it. People just don't like that. Oh, then a few manufacturers, basically people see it and they get upset at the real world. And it's the ASICs are the mirror. They're not the reality itself. They just show you that this is the way the world works. Is people with a lot of money and specialization will get higher participation in this network. And when you say, oh, well, you just change the algorithm, say we're ASIC resistance now, you're just going, la, 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 no centralization ever happens. And it doesn't change it. Just because you cover your eyes and can't see it doesn't mean that it's not turning out the exact same way. Anyway, that's my little rant on that.
That's fine. I agree with you. It's very conservative and it's a bit retrograde, actually. It's not exciting at all. Like, Ethereum Classic, go do cool things. Like, don't do that. It's very, like, no. Your brother is, like, being extremely successful. Like, don't be that weird kid that's, like... yeah, I don't know. It's not interesting.
Yeah.
It's a bad move, I would say. But that's just, as you said, it's also my 2 cents. I'm not, like... super deep into Ethereum Classic. I don't know, like, you know, the mentality of the community that much, but not yay. When I see that type of news, I'm like, meh.
Yeah. Well, then the next, of course, we're talking about, you know, mining empty blocks and stuff. And of course, that is just the greater subject of the Bitcoin split, the Bitcoin Cash
I don't know
split.
what you're talking about.
So
what do you mean?
November 15th, Bitcoin Cash went through a split, and Bitcoin Cash is doing its own thing. And now Maurice Che and the Bitcoin ABC team have created a coin called, I don't know yet, but probably BCHA for now. Aren't they going to change the name or something?
So they are. ABC has mentioned that they were working on a rebrand. There's a couple of tickers flying around. BCHA was one. I heard BHA, and I heard of, you know, obviously Kraken named the best one. It was BAB, BAB. So
which is
those were all the different.
That's what they called Bitcoin Cash in the early days. Remember?
Really, BAB? No.
Yeah, some people did, and then especially during the
BCC.
SV. Yeah, that was
BCC
like Bitconnect, which is BitConnect's ticker, so you can't take that from them.
Yeah, I know.
But it was during the SV split, they were calling it BAB. And then the other ones, like, because they didn't want to, like, SV didn't, still posits it's not like the minority fork of Bitcoin Cash, that it's just like its own thing. It's always an interesting thing when people try to say that, like, you know, my
patents and
yeah, like my minority fork of a minority fork has been around since like 11 years. It's like, not really. Come on. Like, you know.
Well, if you look back at their Merkle tree, it goes back a long way.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty funny to see that. But anyway, so Bitcoin ABC split off. And I believe it was valued somewhere on 10% of what Bitcoin Cash was, just somewhere in the range. I haven't checked recently, but most notably, they had some difficulty algorithm adjustment problems. And then a lot of transactions were just being piled into one big block. And then there was some miner that came out and started mining a whole lot of empty blocks and deliberately excluding a lot of transactions, and then had some, like, you know, good ideas don't require force kind of messages and stuff, which is like, it's interesting. Anyway, what do you take of that before I go on further on that?
I feel I'm torn, okay, because part of me wants to be an ethical person constantly, and, you know, really stand for the good and all of that. And it was hard when I saw this minor, what are they called? Dev voluntarism?
Something like that.
Yeah. So part of me was, I had a chuckle, obviously, when I saw, like, how they're trolling the Coinbase, like how they're being very involved. They kind of, but it's a bit, how do you call that? It's a bit revengeful. Like, they're very, like, it feels, it's a bit of a nasty take on it all, and that's where I wouldn't do it. But I'm not in that position anyways, and but they're defending themselves and saying, okay, we are maybe aggressive now, but they violated the non-aggression principle like for the last 10 months and everything. And I feel like we should just move on. It forked. The miners have shown their support. We have BCHN. We have other things that are more positive to focus on. And I feel like being detrimental as a mine, like you want conscious miners, but you don't want malicious miners. And I feel like that's where I draw the line. But yes, I did smile. I'm sorry. I did find it super funny. And I did think, it is, as just an audience participant, I was like, oh my God, like someone is actually like going through the trouble of doing this, but it's not awakening my best parts of myself.
Yeah. And that's a weird thing. Like over time, I've sort of learned more about how mining works in the practical sense in terms of like when people do secret or selfish mining or mine empty blocks and things like that. The one thing that just boggles my mind, just absolutely boggles my mind here is, first off, why the hell don't you have a difficulty adjustment algorithm that works? And this is a criticism of a lot of proof of work coins that just, I'm spoiled because for as long as I've learned about difficulty adjusting over time, I've been mostly pretty heavy into Dash, and Dash adjusts every single block. So literally, and it's done this since 2014 when it was still called Xcoin. And it's like, this is 6-year-old technology that you can just keep the blocks flowing at a consistent pace. Like, why isn't everyone doing this? It's just like, well, I want to use a stick shift in my car and stuff, which I do, by the way, for that example. But I'm just saying, like, why do you have broken tech? Like, why don't you, especially now that, Bitcoin ABC has taken a much more progressive approach to changing whatever they think isn't working.
No. We have actually. So in the BCHN, blockchain, so BCH is blockchain, by the way, just BCHN is one of the node implementations, that we do have a new DAA, right? So that was another part of the contention when there was a whole Grasberg assert fiasco between, that was just one of the other things in the whole IFP debate that was just like, ugh, really? Now you're even like, at some point they were trying to, it's not even interesting, but whatever. So BCH actually has a new DAA right now, and it's working really fine. It was just to make sure that people were not able to game the DAA, and I think it's doing pretty well on BCH. I don't think what's happening on the ABC chain right now is just linked to the fact there's not a lot of hash power supporting it, basically. And there's a miner who's just like taken control, kind of, over the whole thing. And they were anonymous for a while, and then it's so the DAA, I think, is something separate here than what's happening on ABC. It's not really, basically it's just like one miner mining and spending a lot of money and kind of making a point. Like, this is obviously a miner that's been really upset, and they're just like trying to really remind everyone. Yeah, and they're like not. I feel like they're not dropping this. They're like, it's, I don't know. As I said before, it's a little bit revengeful, but it's not the DAA, because the DAA on BCH right now is working perfectly. Like, we implemented Assert, which was developed by Tumim, and Mark Lunderberg, I think, also participated, whatever. So that went into the code. Everybody was like, yay, great. And then it went through. So BCH has adjusted its DAA.
And that was separate from ABC, or is that?
So because ABC was, I think ABC also implemented the same DAA, by the way, in the end, even though at the certain point. So Jonathan Tuman came out with Assert, and I remember watching the developer meetings with ABC, and then ABC was like, oh no, it's bad. We have a new solution called Grasberg. And everybody was like, wait, what? And there was sort of, ABC was like, oh, what? No, we didn't see anything coming out. Like, we were solving the DAA. And everybody's like, wait, no, Jonathan Tuman just solved the DAA, and here's all the code. And they were like, no. And Amaury wanted to like solve the DAA all the way from the Genesis block, and it would have created longer block time. Like, from, I think it would have added like a 1 minute to each block. It was crazy, and people were like, "Wait, no, there's another dev. I know you don't really want to work with him." That was another ugly moment of the whole IFP thing, and everybody was like, "Wait, Emily?" Just like, no, there's another guy who coded it, and it's fine. And so there was this whole like Assert Grasberg moment, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, this is just like." That pushed a lot of people off the edge of ABC again. That was just like another like, oh well, that was a low move.
A mean move.
I know.
Yeah, and so that goes to the second thing of, and this is something where it gets contentious with a lot of people that are, involved in Bitcoin forks, but I don't think you should have someone else's hashing algorithm unless you either expect to overtake them at some point and be the dominant coin on the chain, or just, I don't know. It doesn't make sense because that's a huge security problem. Like, basically, especially for ABC right now, because you have Bitcoin,
they're in trouble,
which has a ton of hash rate, right? Obviously. Then you have Bitcoin Cash, which has like a very small percentage of that. And then SV, which has close to Bitcoin Cash, but not quite, it's not quite there. And then you have ABC. So anyone trying to mine any of the Bitcoins could just destroy ABC like this, just as they're doing, right? I don't think this is a well-connected individual or a powerful mining pool, just like some dude trying to just destroy this new coin. And because they're so far down the totem pole of the algorithm, it's so easy, which makes me worry a little bit about things like, I don't really worry about BSV because I don't care too much, but like Bitcoin Cash, it makes me worry a little bit because if right now a lot of the miners probably who mine BTC are probably maybe more sympathetic towards Bitcoin Cash. This is just an assumption, right? I don't actually know. And therefore they wouldn't do anything malicious. But literally all you'd have to take is one mining pool of the many Bitcoin mining pools and just decide to do this with Bitcoin Cash. And there you go. It's kind of game over. Not really, but it's basically game over until you get coerced into changing the mining algorithm and then just have different people mining on it. So, like, I don't understand why you just trust that no one's going to destroy you. That's not a good security. That's not a good security method, if you ask me. I don't know. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been like a threat, right? It's always been like, okay, you're a minority fork, or it could always happen, and someone really with ill intent, a malicious miner could come around. But I don't think that would happen in BCH right now. I still think that the security model is working. What we're seeing, though, is that on ABC, at any point, the miner could just stop trolling and just like actually reorg the whole chain. And that would be the end, kind of. And I think there's already been like 2 reorgs, but they've just been like not intentional or something. I didn't see it. It was not like, I saw someone saying they were just casual.
Yeah.
Like not actual basically, but now they're just, what are they doing? I feel like they're orphaning blocks that I don't know, they're playing around. Like you said, this miner is like obviously on having a good week. They're like leaving all these like secret messages in the Coinbase. But for BCH itself, I think a lot of people are still like believe in it, and even a lot of miners are support Bitcoin Cash, proof of work blockchain. It's been working for all these years. Good value proposition. Remember that after the, what was it, New York Agreement or something, like 90% of total hash would have supported bigger blocks. So I still think that BCH has its place. And you mentioned BSV a couple of times, and I think they lost me when they said that their blockchain would never grow, that their blockchain would just never change, which is an interesting kind of business statement. But on the other hand, it's like, why would you halt the development when you see, how much you can still do on a blockchain? And I look forward to actually the couple, maybe where I think another thing that's interesting in BCH right now is that Amaury was kind of like adamant about this whole every 6 months we're forking, we're changing every 6 months. Every 6 months we're introducing something new. And I feel like now we might have more discussions before something actually goes into the code, instead of just having this sort of arbitrary 6 months. No, we will update when there's actually something to update. It's not like mandatory 6 months. So I think that's interesting to see that the culture of development in BCH is also growing and learning from this past year and saying, okay, maybe we don't need every 6 months, but let's maybe integrate things. First, work on it, discuss it, see that we have actual consensus, and then we merge it into the code. No worries, you know. So it's like a different. I feel like a different culture is emerging as well from the ABC reign just stopping. I mean, what's really interesting, I think, for BCH right now is that historically, no cryptocurrency out there has been able to kick out their lead implementation. I'm not sure how, and this is where my Dash knowledge kind of hits a wall. I was going to say, like, the Dash core group. Would you consider Dash DCG? Would that be like your lead implementation?
Yeah.
And I see that maybe this is a good segue for like the governance topics that are happening in Dash right now. Is right. Obviously, we're looking at your video and trying to understand that the Dash core group has a different proposition than, I want to say, the MNOs, the master nodes proposition.
Some of them, yeah.
And so that's really interesting when there's like, because the DCG, the core group is your lead, what I would refer as core, right? Your core lead implementation. And someone else is not, they're not challenging them, but they're saying, well, we would like something different.
Yes.
And I think that's really interesting.
Well, yeah. So when you start going to like history and things like that, first off, would you call the BTC core team the original team? And technically, yes, right? Because it's Bitcoin Core. It's the same repository. It's those people. But Satoshi Nakamoto's not involved. Gavin Andreessen's not involved. Mike Hearn's not involved. Like a lot of the founding early people. Hal Finney's definitely not involved. Poor guy, right? There's a lot of those people are just not involved. So it's the same team, but kind of, and a lot of the founding people are just not. And again, I'm not saying that like everyone found it, but whatever, you know what I mean. A lot of those original people that would be called like the heart soul of the core team are not there anymore, but are still there and disagree with the current core team. So it's a little bit of a hair split on which is the core team of BTC. But yeah, I would say that yes, that is the legacy development team. Now, as far as my memory serves, Monero is kind of it's hard to. So here's the thing. I believe Monero's is not run by its founding team anymore. It gets a little murky in the beginning because there was Bytecoin, which was the first crypto note blockchain, and that was kind of had some problems, and a lot of Monero people call it a scam and stuff. And then right after Bytecoin, right around the same time, again, my memory gets a little fuzzy, BitMonero came out, which became known as Monero later. And I believe that the founder did some sketchy stuff. He's not involved in the project. So like the current people involved are like not the original team-ish. And there's a few cases of that.
Yeah. Is it really about the original founding team, or is it really about people? I feel like it's not about the original people, but it's more about who's been like I'm not gonna say the loudest, but who's been like holding the keys,
making the rules
to the GitHub. Yeah, who's making the rules? And right now in BTC, it's Peter Thiel, Luke Dash Jr., those guys. Okay, it's not like, obviously it's not Satoshi, but it's people that were definitely involved in the block size debate, and those are people that have been, leading that ship for the couple of last years. And there's no other. You have to obey, and to those people, there's no multiple implementation philosophy in Bitcoin, for sure not. I think this is one of those things that was taken from, and that's important in BCH actually, because we didn't want the same thing as in core. We were like, no, never never a core developer going rogue or a team of developer just, blocking everything. I think so. Then that what happened this year is actually quite very BCH of the BCH community to have done, to be like, okay, no, we don't agree with these devs, and these devs are not everything. They're not gods, so they actually are replaceable. That was the mentality, I think.
Well, yeah. So then we get to the history of Dash. So Dash was founded by Evan Duffield, who's a ginger from Arizona, and he was involved with the project for most, I would say about a little over half its existence. I don't remember the exact words, but the exact time. But then he brought on some other developers and stuff, and they were all kind of part of the thing. And he eventually just sort of resigned, and then the other people sort of took over. and just who were already very involved with the project for years. And he's kind of more one of those like adult genius type people who was like really smart, but ended up sort of floating away into creativity heaven, so to speak, just like doing his own thing, thinking his own thing, and then the team's kind of involved now. And that is a very interesting structure because as far as I know, there's basically just one implementation, and it doesn't have to be that way, but it's because the one implementation is so beholden to the people who run it, to the investors, that it kind of like works that way. Just like so basically, first off, the development team is hired by the network itself and could be fired at any given month by the network itself, which means they could just withhold funding from them and pay a different team. However, on a different level, this is recent, as in the last couple of years, there's a few legal structures that are, as far as I know, never created in the world before, that basically acknowledge the masternode vote as a triggering mechanism. That basically, it's called the DAO Irrevocable Trust, which owns things like the Dash website, the Dash repositories, all the other stuff like that. So basically, so if, for example, the dev team goes rogue, you want to get rid of them, and you defund them, and they say, haha, but I'm still going to hold on to all the websites, all the things like that, and make it hard, you could actually get someone to compel them to legally hand that over to a different team that got elected by this decentralized network. And it's basically like a second layer of like real world security for what the digital world sort of decides. So that's one way that basically you can compel the league development team to do whatever they want. And that, in which case, for example, say, like, as far as I remember, Amari willingly gave up the Bitcoin Cash website, right?
No. I mean, that was another fiasco.
Well, okay. Well, then tell me how it went down, because I just saw what was publicly said. That it seemed like ABC's handing over that.
It's just because. Sorry, no, it's just because what happened is that people were saying to exchanges and block explorers and wallets, don't send people to the Bitcoin Cash I can't even remember the name of the website, bitcoincash.org website, because that one was like in complete denial of the IFP and BCHN and all of that. And they were continuing to say, basically, repeating their own message, So people started saying, no, you have to use bch.info. There's other websites out there that are more neutral, at least, or more informative right now, regarding the upcoming fork. And then out of nowhere, Bitcoin ABC was like, oh, we're giving up the ownership of that website. And everybody was like, okay, who are you giving it to? Like, you didn't have to. Or just I think people were just saying, don't just refer to that website. It's not super accurate. It's not very neutral. It's just repeating ABC's narrative. And then they didn't explain why they gave it up. They didn't explain any of that. They just said, oh, we're just dropping it. And I think it's as confusing as them listing BCH, it's as confusing as them a couple of days before the fork listing the other node implementation without the IFP on their website. It was like just confusing messaging all over the place. So sorry, that's just it was not as a nice transition. It was not like a nice, oh yeah, you're right, no, it was just like another like, what? Oh, okay, sure. It's why not?
Because this sort of thing has happened quite a few times in crypto. Like Bitcoin.com and org are both something else. Like Bitcoin.com obviously was Roger Ver's thing, and when that became no longer when he fell, when that became more of a Bitcoin Cash thing, then it's like, oh, scam website, whatever. I remember all the fights about that. Then Bitcoin.org was like the pro core team website, but then the guy who runs it, Cobra, is a little bit of a loose cannon. He's a little bit of not either of them. And so it just, there is no BTC website really now.
I was going to, so go back. I think I'm really learning about, I love talking to you as well, because when I saw you with Colin and on other shows, I want to learn more about other I mean, I feel like I have a okay understanding of other projects, but I feel like I'm not as involved in like the daily, talks and community feelings and stuff. So back to the dashed out irrevocable trust. That is not the Dash core team. That's something different.
It's a legal structure to represent basically everyone who owns Dash.
But who's in that DAO base? Is it anyone?
So anyone who
you said investors before.
Yeah, so anyone who runs a masternode. And so in order to run a masternode, you have to have 1,000 units of Dash, which right now is like $90-something thousand. But there's a lot of people that run partial masternodes. Like there's people who pool their funds together, and there's no since there's no like KYC or anything, obviously, who knows who's involved in these, say, 4,800 or so masternodes, right? It's just people who own Dash can, pull together and kind of do that. So the trust is just a organization that's directed by them. It's an ownerless, memberless organization, because the masternodes direct it to do. And it's basically just a real life guarantee of what happens online, which is whatever the masternodes say goes. And it keeps someone from running away from stuff.
Okay, so what do they have? They have the website, I see, like they have like the dash.org.
Yeah, so
there are things that they control.
Yeah, you might want to say that again. You were a little bit garbled for a second.
Oh, sorry, I'm just gonna check. So yeah. So they have central.org, the one website, for example. Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit. I think you said what property they control. I mean, obviously they control the main Dash website, dash.org, and I believe the GitHub repositories, which again was the big contention with the Bitcoin core team, right? BTC, was that the core team controlled the repositories, and so whoever runs the Bitcoin core repository kind of controls everything. And then whoever, obviously, the subreddit, our Bitcoin, right? That's another bit. And so basically all these things are kind of controlled by the trust. It's so if for whatever reason happens, the core team, the Dash core team does something crazy, the trust can compel them to do other things. Yes, I am.
So what is, so I said it's a, is it another one of the more, the big power having this trust, or was it the kind of the top?
Would you mind really quick just refreshing the Jitsi link? And it's hard to hear exactly what you say right now, so just close some tabs, restart it, and see if we get it any better. Yeah, so it's a good time to go through the live chat and see what other people have been saying. So, let me just turn this off for just a second. Yes, I understand our video thing's lagging. For some reason, the connection just went nowhere for a little bit, but such things happen. Cobra's a snake, so his name fits. Yes. I don't know exactly what to think of this Cobra fellow, because he seems to be sort of all over the place. Ooh, let me
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes. Could you let me reshare the screen so that you can see what's going on there. But oh, are you still there? Can you still hear me? There we go. I can see you again.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, let me share the application.
But not very well.
Yeah, I can hear you pretty clearly now.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're semi back.
Okay, good.
Connection seems to improve. I was just going through the live chat, and someone's saying Cobra is a snake and such. But how much of your questions on the trust did you get answered before you couldn't hear anymore?
No, not that many. I could hear you saying, okay, that they control the main Dash website, that they have the GitHub repository, and then I was wondering what is the governance of that trust, basically, because if they control all of these things, very interesting, by the way,
yes,
then how do they decide on stuff?
So the trust is directed by a vote of the masternodes, and anyone with 1,000 Dash can run a masternode. Anyone with any amount of Dash can get together with other people and then run a masternode, and no one knows who these people are because no KYC, and it just there we go. The network votes, and whatever the network votes is carried out by the trust. They're compelled to do that, and so including there's a group of trust protectors that are elected by, again, blockchain vote that actually executes on these kinds of things. So mostly they're just kind of there they kind of sit around and don't do much until it's something like, for example, if someone said like, I'm going to take over the Dash subreddit and do all this kind of nasty stuff. Basically the trust protectors would go have a meeting with whoever was doing that and say, yeah, you can't do that. And then eventually they would be the ones to actually remove things. And so Dash Core Group, or the Dash Core Teams company, they're owned by, like, legally owned by the trust. So like, let's say if the CEO of the Dash Core team is doing some weird things, rather than just say, I'm going to defund the whole core team, start from scratch with a new one, what you could actually do is the trust could actually remove the CEO, but keep the whole rest of the thing, and then you hire a new CEO or whatever. So
has that ever happened? Like, have you guys ever like fired one of your lead devs? I'm just obviously interested.
Now the Dash Core team has hired and fired quite a few devs over the years, but everything goes up pretty well. There hasn't been really cause for that, because usually what you tend to do if you're owned or controlled by someone else, you tend to not wait for them to kick you out if like there's some decisions that are a little bit different. And that's like the ultimate history of Dash governance is pretty boring in terms of just everyone sort of gets along, and there we go.
Aww, but that sounds lovely.
But people do argue and fight and stuff on like the lower levels, but if it becomes a big enough issue, it gets put to a vote, and after the vote it's kind of solved. So this most recent thing was basically it gets really complicated as far as, very in the weeds as far as like what the actual disagreement was. But basically, it was a decision of who gets to pay, who pays the treasury, who pays for development, stuff like that. And now before, it was kind of the whole network, because new coins created, right, inflate the supply, and it was seen as free money, because hey, you spend the treasury. If you don't spend it, it doesn't get created. But when you think about it, it doesn't get created. It makes your stuff more scarce, therefore more valuable. Therefore, everyone kind of pays when you inflate the currency to a certain extent to pay for stuff. And so basically, there's a change that's happening either way, which is that instead of not creating the coins, they will be created, but they'll just be given whatever's not spent will, instead of not being created, will be created, but will just be given to everyone. And so it's literally, economically, it's the exact same thing, except the difference is you actually see what you're spending and not spending. So it would be like, imagine if every time a government inflates the currency to pay for terrible things. What if they don't spend that, and then everyone just got stimulus checks in the mail of their portion of the inflation? People would love that, and they would hate spending now, right? So it's basically like that kind of a thing, is fixing the economic alignment. The thing is, basically what the Dash Core team wanted to do was split the unspent coins amongst miners and masternodes, as they already split the regular block reward. But what a group of masternodes decided to do is they said they wanted all of the treasury to cost the masternodes and benefit the masternodes. As in, it wouldn't be the miners get shorted some money. They would just get a fixed amount no matter what gets spent. But just if the masternodes spent more money, then they would get less money, right? And if they spent less, they would get more. But it was just basically making a little bit more, they deal with everything. They already make all the funding decisions, right? So why not make them take all the possible benefits and costs of these decisions? It was kind of the thinking. And so it's just a very, I would say, nitpicky kind of a thing, which, some people watching might be like, no, it was really important, it was a big thing, or no, but it's very It was just a very like, well, we think that we're trying to realign the incentives to make things work better, but we're like, this is the better alignment than this one. And then, there was a lot of argument and debate and stuff like that, and nothing too angry as far as I could remember. And then, I did 2 podcasts on it, and I did another little video, which I sent over, I believe, a little while ago. And in the end, the Dash Core team proposition won. It won by a decent margin, but not an overwhelming margin. And now you got to just like shut up because they won. Like, there's no more fighting, no more splitting. It's just it's decided. It's clear where the network stands. So why fight anymore? And one thing I'm working on for next week is going through a history of proposals and which ones have gone which way. As I believe I already talked to you about, I think it was off air on another podcast maybe months ago or whatever, there were a couple of times when the Dash Core team did not get their way, which is the logo for one. The Dash logo.
We did speak about that. We did speak about the logo.
They didn't get their way there. There's at least, I actually, through my digging up, there's 3 different PR teams that the Dash Core team wanted to hire over the years, since the first one in 2015, where they got rejected by the network. And there was another one that they were hiring that they ended up not, just deciding that they didn't have room in the budget for a PR team, or they decided to reallocate resources. So that's on a rejection of the PR team. But there was actually 3 ones that were rejected that the core team proposed. So one of them was their partner for many years, Waxman PR. And I am not going to talk too much smack on the air, but basically there was a lot of the community really felt they weren't doing the job correctly. And over time, they just ended up getting voted out, and then a new PR team get in. Some people in the core team might still be salty about that to this day, but hey, they don't rule, they don't make the decisions. Okay,
so what's interesting is that the Dash Core group, so the development team basically hasn't always gotten their way, right? That's what you're saying. It's like sometimes that network does win an argument. So it's kind of, so the balance of power is between the master nodes and the development team, right? And those are your 2 actors that sometimes disagree, but then you would never see a situation where, okay, in this case, the Dash Core group proposal went through. The MNO one was like, no, the network voted, it's not happening. You wouldn't see a situation when someone would fork off Dash and go with the MNO solution, right? That wouldn't happen.
Yes, for a couple of big reasons. And there's a couple of actual examples of something close to this in the past. But first off, the voting decision is based on who the actual possession of the coins. And so if you fork off to a different network, like say 2/3 vote against you, 1/3 votes for you. And then you're like, well, the 1/3 wants to split off. The 2/3 own 2/3 majority of that network too.
Right.
So like, why would you, it doesn't solve the problem. So
you're stuck.
There have been, I think there was one like Dash split fork that happened a long time ago, but that was some Chinese project called Safe. It was kind of like a deliberate scam type thing. Again, didn't look into it too closely, but it wasn't trying to make a new, cool, awesome project. No one in Dash even heard about it until like I was doing some research. Hey, there's this thing, like they forked it over and then had an extra like founder's reward or something. So it's like no one even knows this thing exists. So there was that. That was the only one I can actually think of as far as like a chain split. But back in the day of 2016, early 2017, there was a group of people that were really annoyed with the core team, and they hated them, didn't like their decisions, and they put some proposal for something or other, and the proposal got completely rejected by the network. And they were talking about before the proposal. They were talking about forking Dash because they didn't like the core team. But instead of forking Dash, they just joined Pivx. Now I remember when Pivx was like popular, it was like in the top 20. That was them. That was the former Dash people jumping over. And then a bunch of them went off into Smart Cash.
No way.
And then there you go. So, but again, they didn't fork the coin. They just, which actually Pivx is a Dash fork as far as I know. As far as it's the It was based on the same code base. It was just a a proof of stake version, but it didn't actually split the chain. So
Okay, interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
as I'm sure you might have seen, Amari was talking what he's talking about Dash. He calls it he says very bureaucratic but stable, and I'm not sure if I kind of agree in terms of you have to get together and get a vote and stuff to like make big decisions, and then everyone abides by that and stuff like that. But especially like the stable thing, that like nothing dramatic has happened. It just secure, stable, as long it's fine. And sometimes I would like for there to be a little bit more excitement and community based kind of things going on, but at least there's not like forks and drama and things like that.
I think, yeah, there's every blockchain out there has its pros and cons basically on their design. And I think when I talked about self-funding mechanisms now, like a year and a half ago with Amaury, and I said, imagine if we were like Dash and we had like 10% of the block reward, and how much we could do, and then we had the whole IFP debacle. But what was
what
interesting
you're saying is
is
your fault, right? Just kidding.
I wouldn't be. I'm not that pretentious. But it's interesting because we did have the conversation about looking at other blockchains designs, and he was always about funding. For him that was a huge issue, right? He was like, I need more funding so we can hire more people, so we can do more things. But at the same time, when he saw projects like Flipstarter, which were like, okay, voluntary funding from people, from anybody basically who has BCH can support or not a basically a kind of GoFundMe type of project. He was really against having to showcase anything. He was really against the whole, it's going to be like a beauty contest and all these devs are going to fight. Basically, he didn't want any of the accountability. So even in a self-funding situation, you have the possibility of firing your dev team. It's not just, I'm going to take part of the Coinbase and let's never talk about, the accountability of the work that I'm offering.
Which that is an interesting thing that has happened in the Dash ecosystem as well. Is there's been a lot of proposals that have spent a lot of times doing lobbying for like saying, I want to look at all these great things. We're doing great. Vote for us. Yay. Like, there's like a lot of that sort of stuff that probably goes a little above and beyond just what a business would do as far as advertising to their customers the good work they're doing. I think part of that problem might have been with the whole free money idea of that there's money out there that can be spent and then everyone's trying to get at it. Where when you have the idea that it's your money you're spending, there's a little bit less like scamminess as far as like trying to get at it. It's
What's the situation on spending? I haven't checked. Like, do you actually spend all the, 10%? Is that every time maxed out, or is that, because I saw that in this new proposal, they wanted to make sure that it could go from 10 to 20 to be able to fund bigger things, or a big chunk could come out suddenly. Like,
so under the old unaligned system, right, or the current system, right, but the one that won't be for very long, I guess. Mostly, like almost every month, it was close to 100% of the 10% was but except at 2017, December of 2017, I believe was the lowest I remember, which is only 40%. But the reason it was only 4%. The reason it was that is because that 10% was worth like 10 million USD just for the month at that point. And so that was a ton of money. So he did not need to spend. There was just nothing to spend the rest on. Recently, as in the last 6, 8, 9 months or so, there's been a lot of months where there's been money on the table, but it has not been spent. Because I think the masters are starting to wise up and realize they're spending their own money in a way. But this proposal would hopefully change things to make that more obvious. So yeah, the idea of a 20% would be 20% would almost never be reached. In fact, the expectation would be a lot closer to like 8% or 6% or something like that, depending on the other conditions. But that's the funny thing when you talk about this is also when you have that artificial 10% every single month, you kind of get you kind of get pressure to spend more because it's like a scarcity thing. It's like, this is all we're going to get. We better spend it just in case, so there's more money we got out of it in case whatever. Whereas if you can go up to a 20%, you might be spending less on a usual basis, because if there's some, you need something, you go higher. But it's very fascinating because all this is a experiment in human psychology, in human action, in human economic principles and incentives and stuff like that. And I guess there's only one way to really tell how this is going to work, and which is just, wait and find out.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because it reminds me basically of how governments work, right? Where if a certain department doesn't actually, I think it's the road, whatever department it is, but if they don't use all of their budget, then next year they don't get as much. So every department is incentivized to always spend everything. Make sure make sure to at least spend everything, if not spend a bit more that you don't have, so that you feel like you're always justified. Like, I'm here and my work is so valuable, and if that means that I'm laying 3 roads that are unnecessary, I'm building them because I want to be able next year to have as much money as this year. So interesting.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to find out. And one thing is, I am very interested in trying to port a flip starter type thing for Dash as well.
Yeah.
Because I think it works great side by side. Because let's just say everyone votes to spend out of their own money. And like, what happens if it's like a 60-40 vote or something like that, or 60% of people just do not want this. They don't think it's going to work. They don't believe in it. But 40% is like, no, this is huge. It's going to work. They lose. It just doesn't get funded. Well, I'd love for a way for those 40% to still fund it 100% out of their own pocket, excluding those other people, take their own chance. And therefore, you have like a flow chart where also a lot of proposals do not need to come before the whole network. Like, can you imagine if every single time someone wanted to do a flip starter in Bitcoin Cash, every single person who held Bitcoin Cash would have to like have a say in it? That would be awful. Some people just don't want to pay attention. They're just like, yeah, if you guys care about that, you do that. Right now, every time you put a Dash proposal up, the entire network has to look at it. And so that's not scalable. It's great for like, are you going to fund the development team? What are you going to do? Major changes? Like, sure, everyone needs to pay attention to that, but it's like, hey, I'm going to go start, a little adoption initiative and like, this and that. And like, all right, like the people who care can pay attention. The people who don't care can ignore it. So I think those two things side by side would make a pretty nice kind of a system.
Yeah. I never thought of the fact that your whole network was like informed of all the proposal. Yeah, obviously it's like this sort of, it's like a dashboard, right? And then you have all the, no pun intended. Is that how you call it? The dash? Is that how you call it? The dashboard?
Well, it's the treasury is what they call it. But like, yeah. It could,
that's a missed opportunity for a rebrand. That's the dashboard.
Yes, of course.
Okay, sorry. I'll make a proposal for that.
Yeah, rename dashboard. And people will be like, you little, say a bunch of mean things and vote it down.
You're a troll. You're annoying everybody.
Well, we're coming towards the end of, probably going a little overtime here, but we do have one question here before I hit the live chat question at the end, which is, please address your favorite projects at the moment. What coins do you own? Now, first off, I'm not going to say everything that I own, but it's also not very complicated. I use Dash day to day, so that's most of what I use and have. I have some Bitcoin Cash because I sometimes use that as well. I use library tokens because I publish everything on library, and there you go. And I wouldn't talk about favorite projects that I don't really hold. That's kind of a weird thing because I'm not really doing. I do have a few random Ethereum tokens because I publish on some sites. Then people tip me in that, and then there you go. That's what I have. I'm a fan of Presearch, which is like a decentralized search engine type thing that pays you to search. It's kind of like Brave browser, but search engine version. And there's a few others that I like. Like I like Firo, which used to be called Zcoin until like a month ago. And I don't have any though, so who cares? That's kind of where I'm at. I pay attention to the Ethereum type smart contracty coins out of the side of my eye, but I don't really get too much into that. So what about you? You got Bitcoin Cash, and then you're also an ABC whale, I bet.
No, we sold.
Oh,
Sold my ABC.
yeah. Cashed out on that
What do
sweet,
I
sweet
want to say?
airdrop.
Well, yeah.
Mm.
Well, I did it. Well, we did it as well as Satoshi's Angels because we had some BCH basically from the flip starter, and then we had to discuss what we were going to do with those funds and if we would, split our coins and sell, and we had all of that conversation.
Yeah.
I like a lot of things, but I personally don't disclose like the full portfolio. I guess I do follow a lot what Cyber Capital is invested in, so yeah, and that's a diversified portfolio. That's like because I kind of split my investments to like what I'm actually using. This week, for example, I do a Crypto 101 class for Lebanon.
Yeah.
BCH was my coin of predilection, obviously, because that's the coin that I can send for no money, and it's I feel like different coins for different use cases. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say. But you said doesn't just sell. She dumps her. I didn't dump. We didn't.
Just don't
we
sell.
didn't
You
dump.
dump. It's just selling, but just with more vigor in the button when you push it. Just dump it. All right. So then we had a live chat question here from the same person. Great. Well, you and Eléonore should do this regularly. Get something like Naomi and Paul. Also, what's her coin tree at? Where her coin tree at?
Let me go shill it. Let me go shill my coin tree. Oh, that's very sweet of you,
Blanc,
people.
right? So
yeah, it's the block blank one.
So everyone, before you get off, go to cointr.ee/block BLANC Blanc. And that's her coin tree, and then you can throw her all the monies there. Don't forget the one that's on the screen too, which is Cointree/the Desert Links, not the Desert Linux. And I make that pun every time, but it does make you think about things.
Yeah, that's a good one actually.
Yeah.
I like it. But yeah, I love talking to you, Joel. It's been first of all, when I had the first chat with you with Colin, that was really a lot of fun. And absolutely, I was watching Naomi and Paul Pui doing their coin overview the other day, and they're also great speakers, great people in the industry. So thank you, whoever appreciated our conversation today.
Yes. Well, thanks very much for being on, and that might be something to explore in the future. Is doing a for lack of a better term, a foursome, like the two and the two all together on like a big super podcast.
Yay! All people that
channels.
Love everybody that likes peer-to-peer electronic cash, whatever that is.
Yes, we'll have to do maybe a Christmas week, like or a New Year week, like somewhere in that one of those 2 weeks.
Oh, that's cute.
Do like a 2 to 3 hour long just thing, and yeah, I'll explore that. Probably doesn't need to be like live on the podcast. We're trying to like make plans and stuff, but hey, this is why you guys listen. So thanks everyone for listening and watching and everywhere. Make sure to like and subscribe and stuff. Also, I mean, I just finally passed 1,000 downloads on the audio only version of this. So if you're on iTunes or any of that, please leave a review, which really helps everything get out there. I have a bunch of links down there where I'm shilling all kinds of great things like, library, which is where, I upload all these things to, or Bitrefill. You can use my code DCN to get stuff on Bitrefill, which by the way, I don't know if Black Friday is a thing elsewhere in the world, but I did some Black Friday shopping at H&M and used Bitrefill and got 1% rewards from that, which is very nice. So very nice. That's how I live on cryptos.
Okay, so I think that our next video should be you doing your H&M haul.
Yes.
I want to see.
I got this really cute sweater. It was like 30% off, and yes, that'll definitely be it. But anyway, thanks everyone. Hit up all the stuff. We will see you in 1 week for the Dash podcast, and 2 weeks for another episode of the Rundown. And please vote for who you want to be back on. You can vote for Eléonore, and maybe we'll listen. We'll see. Bye, everybody.